Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that cuts through all the noise to bring you what really counts in DeFi, entertainment, and sports.
And we're brought to you by Defiant, your on-chain lifestyle sports brand.
Exactly. We're here to give you that edge, with analysis that goes a bit deeper than just the headlines. And today, well, we're really zeroing in on some pretty important shifts happening in the crypto world, things you probably need to be aware of.
That's right. We've been digging through the latest happenings to pull out the really crucial stuff.
Yeah.
And our goal today really is to help you understand not just what's going on, but, why it actually matters for the whole financial picture and for you personally.
Okay, good stuff. Let's jump right in then. We are seeing some major players, big institutions, changing how they approach crypto.
Definitely.
So first up, there's this report. It really caught my eye.
Yeah.
About UBS Asia clients. They're moving a lot of assets.
Yeah, that's a big one. We're talking about approximately $1 trillion in assets held by UBS's clients in Asia, and it's reportedly moving away from the U.S. dollar.
Okay, away from the dollar and into what?
Into gold and cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin was specifically mentioned.
$1 trillion shifting. I mean, that's massive.
Yep.
What's driving that? What's the reason?
Well, the main thing seems to be these escalating geopolitical tensions, between the U.S. and China primarily.
Right.
So these investors, they seem to be looking for assets that they think offer some protection from those kinds of international pressures. And what's really interesting here is how Bitcoin is being put on the same level as gold, the traditional safe haven.
Okay, so this isn't just people betting on prices going up. It sounds more like a strategic move, right? Based on a real assessment of global risks.
Exactly. It feels much more strategic.
So what does that tell us about how people see Bitcoin now?
Well, it signals a pretty significant maturation, I think, in how big money views digital assets. Putting Bitcoin in that kind of strategic bucket, it suggests, growing confidence. Confidence in its role as a store of value, kind of like a digital gold for tricky times.
Yeah.
And this isn't just a few individuals. It's described as institutional level movement. That hints at maybe a longer-term trend, diversification into decentralized assets maybe, as a hedge against, traditional economic and political risks.
That really does highlight how the whole story around Bitcoin is changing. Okay, speaking of established players making moves, JPMorgan. They've also been in the news, right? Doing something on a public blockchain for the first time.
Yes, that's correct. They've mostly used private blockchains before, so doing their first transaction on a public one. Yeah, that's a pretty notable step for a huge traditional finance firm like JPMorgan.
Okay, can you break that down a bit? What exactly did that transaction involve?
Sure. So it used Chainlink's cross-chain tech, basically technology that lets different blockchains talk to each other.
Okay.
And it also involved Ondo Finance's tokenized U.S. Treasury Fund, OUSG, they call it.
Tokenized Treasury Fund. So like a digital version of government debt on the blockchain.
Pretty much, yeah. It makes things like U.S. Treasuries easier to use in these blockchain-based deals. And this specific transaction was for what's called a delivery versus payment settlement, basically ensuring assets and payment change hands simultaneously.
Right, got it.
Right.
So why is a giant like JPMorgan doing this on a public network? What's the big deal for us?
Well, the significance is really about active engagement. A major traditional player using the transparency and, openness of a public blockchain for a real financial task. It kind of hints at a future where, the efficiency and maybe the innovation we see in DeFi, decentralized finance, could start merging more with traditional finance.
Interesting.
And using these tokenized real-world assets like the Treasury Fund, that also points to this growing trend of putting tangible stuff onto the blockchain, which could, make trading and managing those assets way more efficient.
So the question then becomes,
are we going to see more traditional assets, more big institutions using public blockchains for finance stuff? It feels like a possibility now.
It really does feel like maybe the early days of these two worlds starting to converge, maybe.
Could be.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Thinking about the foundation these things run on.
Yeah.
Security, that's always huge. And the Ethereum Foundation has announced something big there.
Yes, absolutely. They clearly recognize just how much value is now secured on Ethereum. So they've launched this initiative called $1 trillion security.
Wow.
It's a really comprehensive push to seriously upgrade the security of wallets, smart contracts, user interfaces, basically everything in the Ethereum ecosystem.
Trillion-dollar security. I mean, the name alone tells you the scale of what they're tackling. Why is this so vital right now?
Well, as Ethereum grows, right, in value and adoption, it's becoming the base layer for potentially trillions of dollars in on-chain assets managed directly on the blockchain.
Right.
So making sure it's resistant to hacks, to vulnerabilities, that's just fundamental, absolutely crucial.
Makes sense.
So this initiative, it's proactive. It's about building a safer, more trustworthy environment. And that's key for attracting everyone, individuals, institutions, and just for the network's long-term health.
Yeah, and for you, if you're holding assets on Ethereum or using apps.
Exactly. This directly affects how safe your stuff is, your holdings, your transactions.
Absolutely. Trust is everything, right?
Yeah.
Especially in this newer digital space.
Right.
Okay, let's move to another network, Ronin. It started very focused, but it sounds like it's expanding.
Yeah, Ronin, it was initially built for that huge game, Axie Infinity.
Right.
But it's shown really impressive growth. They're talking about like 400,000 weekly active users and over 55,000 weekly swaps happening right in users' wallets. That shows people are really using it.
Those are pretty big engagement numbers, yeah. So how are they trying to grow beyond just gaming?
So they've launched something called Open Ronin. And the main idea is to connect with other big blockchain platforms. They mentioned Base and Arbitrum specifically.
Okay.
And the goal seems to be taking Ronin's user-friendly approach, which they really nailed for gaming, and bringing that to a, wider crypto audience.
So they're trying to make crypto easier to use for everyone.
Essentially, yeah. Lowering the barrier to entry, making interacting with blockchain apps feel less complicated, focusing on that user experience, which they clearly found success with in gaming.
It sounds like they're betting that ease of use is the key thing. If they can make crypto feel as simple as playing a game, well, that could really help bring more people in, right? Across different blockchains.
Precisely. I think it highlights something really important. User experience is critical for getting mainstream adoption. Ronin's success in gaming, it's kind of a roadmap, maybe, for how other networks can attract users by just making things simpler.
Good point. Okay, finally, we can't really talk crypto without touching on Bitcoin price predictions. And some of them seem pretty optimistic lately.
Yeah, that's definitely true. We are seeing a wave of analysts putting out some very, very bullish forecasts for Bitcoin. Some predictions go as high as like $220,000 by the end of 2025.
$220,000. Wow. That's bold. What are the main arguments people are using to back that up?
Well, this optimism, it seems fueled by a few things. Hopes for better regulations, maybe. Continued institutional money flowing into Bitcoin.
Right, the ETF effect and all that.
And also this growing idea of Bitcoin as a sort of strategic reserve asset, like digital gold, but for companies, maybe even countries down the line.
And we've seen quite a range in these predictions, haven't we? It's not just one number.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at the various 2025 forecasts, it's all over the place, which, shows how hard it is to predict markets.
For sure.
You've got Standard Chartered around $200, seeing it as a macro hedge. H.C. Wainwright at $225K, talking about Bitcoin's cycles after halvings.
Okay.
BlackRock's Larry Fink even mentioned a potential $700,000 if institutions just put a small slice, like 2-5%, into Bitcoin. Then Vanek is more like $180, but they add a warning about maybe a dip depending on how fast institutions actually adopt. Sina, or 21st Capital, uses math models and gets a really wide range. Fundstrat's Tom Lee is at $250K, citing more money flowing in. Chamath Palihapitiya mentioned $500, linking it to Bitcoin being a hedge against monetary instability.
So lots of different reasons.
Yeah. And even 10x Research has a $122K target from technical charts, and a survey by GFOX found a median expectation around $150.
Okay, so that really paints a picture, lots of different views, lots of factors influencing these numbers. It's a good reminder that even with all the optimism, nobody really knows for sure.
Exactly. These are all speculative, right? But taken together, they do signal this growing belief in Bitcoin's long-term value and its potential role in the bigger financial world.
Yeah.
And the variety of reasons behind the predictions also shows how many different ways people are thinking about Bitcoin's value now.
Okay, so let's quickly recap our deep dive into crypto today. We've covered big money-shifting assets potentially due to global politics.
Right. UBS clients moving towards Bitcoin and gold.
Traditional giants like JPMorgan actually using public block funds.
Yeah, dipping their toes into DeFi infrastructure.
The Ethereum Foundation, making serious moves on security.
That trillion-dollar security push, very important.
Ronin Network, growing beyond its gaming roots by focusing on user experience.
Trying to make crypto easier for everyone.
And finally, this whole range of really optimistic, though varied, Bitcoin price forecasts.
Yeah, exactly. All these pieces together, they paint a picture of a crypto space that's dynamic, it's maturing fast, you see more institutions getting involved, a real focus on security and usability, and just evolving ideas about what these digital assets are actually worth.
It's definitely a space that changes constantly. Staying informed is key. Now, while this deep dive hit the big DeFi and crypto news, just remember, the Defiant podcast brought to you by Defiant, your on-chain lifestyle sports brand is where you get the top news across DeFi, entertainment, and sports. So while sports and entertainment weren't the focus today, you can definitely count on us for those updates and insights in our future discussions.
Which does bring up maybe a final thought for you, the listener. Thinking about all this, the convergence with traditional finance, the focus on user experience, what do you see as the biggest opportunities ahead, or maybe the biggest hurdles still remaining for decentralized tech to really go mainstream?
Yeah, definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive from Defiant, your lifestyle sports brand on-chain.
We'll keep cutting through that noise for you.
Absolutely. Bringing you the insights you need to stay ahead in this fascinating, always changing world.